Hello, Sudoku friends, and welcome to an evil puzzle by websudoku.com. As usual, I've transferred the grid over to sudokuexchange.com because of the nicer interface. Let's see what this puzzle brings. As usual, I was talking, by the way, this evening, or that would have been last night, because now it's 10 to 6 in the morning. With a couple of Vietnamese friends, and we talked about how we solve sudokus, and they seem to go by the numbers. They would now look at the ones here and see what can we do. Then they would look at the twos and see how we can go on with the twos and so on. And I told them that I used to do that back in the day when I started by doing notations before doing anything else until I discovered that it's much faster, at least for me anyway, to just look at the entire grid and the numbers kind of pop out at you if you just look at the entire grid from a distance. For example, it's easy to see that the two sevens here force a seven to go in one of these squares, and the twos here force a two to go here and here. I see no need for pencil marking any of this because it's just so obvious where things can go and especially where they can't go. So after you've done this for a while, it becomes really easy. At the same time, just looking at this chewed up here, these first three rows, it just seems so obvious that these sixes here force a six to go here. There can be no question. And now, of course, with this user interface, the sixes are now highlighted and show me that a six can go here. But even without this visual assistance, which by the way, I don't really like, but I can't seem to get rid of it on this interface. Even without this, it's very obvious that this is the only place that a six can go. And now I'm looking at the eights here. I know that an eight will have to go in one of these two cells. And I also know that I just discussed with you how a two could go in one of these two cells. So even without pencil marking this, I know that these have to be eights and twos. And even if I didn't do it in this order, I would still see the eight and the two here. And I would know that they are now spoken for in these two blocks of 3 by 3 cells. So I need to find eights and twos for this row here in the third block. That would be block 9, the third in this chute here. So these are twos and eights, and I don't need to pencil mark them because that would just be a waste of time. And now that these two squares have been spoken for, I see the one here. Where can a one now go? It can only go here in this row. I see the two sixes here, and I know that a six will have to go here or here. And I see these two sixes, and I know that a six will have to go here or here. So once I've seen this, kind of, I don't need to pencil mark anything because I will now remember that. I also see that the 8 and the 9 here, they can't go here, can they? And there are only two squares left in this box where a 9 and an 8 can go. So this is a 9 and an 8, and that automatically gives me the 3 digits that are missing here, which is going to be a 1, 2, and a 5. And now that I know that these have to be a 1, 2, and a 5, I immediately start looking for fives, ones, and twos in these rows here, in these empty cells. So a 5, for example, I can't find any place for a 5 here. What about a 2? Well, there's a 2 coming up here, so and there are two twos coming up here, so one of these will have to be a 2, but I can't immediately find a 2 for this box here, so I'm not looking any further. And about the ones, it's the same as a 2. So any one of these four squares can be a 1 and a 2. So I'm not even bothering looking further for that. But since I know that these have to be a 1, 5, and a 2, I also know that these have to be a 3, 4, and a 7. And now I have more luck because there's a 3 and a 4 going up here. So this must be a 7, mustn't it? And now I look down and I see that these two cells are blocked. This 7 blocks over here. So one of these must be a 7. And I immediately now look over here to see uh, what happens when I have a ghost 7 here and a 7 here. I need to find a 7 for this row. And they have to go in this box over here. And I happen to have a 7 blocking down here and a 7 blocking up here. So this is a 7. And this is really all there is to it. Now one of these two must be a 7, of course, but since we have a 7 coming down here, blocking here and here, this can't very well be a 7, can it? So this must be a 7. And by the way, since I found the one here, and these have to be 2 and 8, remember? I remember because we talked about it, so there's no reason to forget it. These two have to be a 4 and a 5. So I don't know which one will go where, but I now know that these two have to be a 9 and a 3. And I don't know where to place them either. But it's just something that I store away in my short-term memory, and I'm done. A 3 must go in one of these two cells because we have a 3 blocking over here. That means that one of these must be a 3. So a 3 here and a 3 here forces a 3 to go here or here, right? Now we got the 4. This 4 blocks over here, and therefore one of these must be a 4. And since we have a 4 here now and a ghost 4 here, one of these up here must be a 4. So these are 3s and 4s. I mean, I know that from earlier because we discussed that these 3 had to be a 3, 4, and a 7, right? And that's how we found the 7. But this is just another way of looking at the entire grid and finding digits. And having just talked about the twos here, and we know that these two can be twos, I also see the two eights here. That means that these two cells have to be a 2-8 pair. And then I immediately start looking down and say, what else is missing? I still need 4 digits. One of them is a 9, so I know that one of these here will have to be a 9. I also need a 1. So one of these must be a 1 because we have a 1 and a 9 already blocking these two cells. So this is a 2-8, this is a 1-9. Another thing that I do when I spot something like the 1 and the 9 here, I start looking at these 4 empty squares. What can they be? If these have to be 1 and 9, then now I know that this can't be a 6, and this can't be a 6 because of the 6 here. So we blocked these. They can't be 6s, can they? These have to be 1 and 9, so that leaves only this square for a 6. And we know that one of these must be a 5 now, because we have a 5 over here, so one of these must be a 5. So back to the 2-8. Let's just mark them like this, 2-8 and 3-4. That leaves us 3 empty squares, and we also need to find 3 empty squares for a 1, 9, and a 5. There's a 9 here coming up here, so this has got to be a 9. And now there's the question of the 1 and the 5. And let's mark these again. 3, 4, 2, 8. These two now have to be a 1 and a 5. Since we know that one of these must be a 5, because we analyzed it, then this can't be a 5, can it? And this 5 blocks over here, and we know that these have to be a 1 and a 9, making this a 5. And finding this 5 took away a possible square for a 7. The 7 blocks here and the 7 blocks here, and these have to be a 1 and a 9, therefore this must be a 7. And that makes this here a 7. And we have all the 7s now. These two have to be a 3 and a 4, of course, because we know that this is a 3 or a 4. We analyzed that already. But now that we have this 4 here, it blocks this square, so it must be a 3, and the 3 therefore goes here and the 4 here. And that makes this a 4. Now these must be a 5 and a 6. Now we got a possible 5 in these two squares. We know that one of these must be a 5. And we know that one of these must be a 5. The other, of course, must be a 4, because we talked about that already. Another thing about pencil marks, the Snyder notation would have us do things like this. Let's see, we'll put in 2, 8 here, because we can have exactly 2 8s and 2 2s in this box here. So we can put in Snyder notation, and that would also make this a 2 8. And this would be a 1 5. Sorry, a 1 5, not a 2 5. And these could be an 8 and a 9, like so. But I think it's pretty clear from just looking at this that these pencil marks, in my view anyway, are pretty useless, because they just show us what we already know. So where the pencil marks would possibly become useful is looking at the 2 1s here. That would put a 1 in one of these 3 cells. But Snyder allows us only to input 2 pencil marks when there are 2 possible squares in a box. So a 1 couldn't possibly be entered into any of these 3 cells as a pencil mark. We could enter in these 2 a 4 and a 5, yes, and in these 2 a 9 and a 3. But I think it's pretty clear that they don't contribute anything. Because once you have solved the greater part of a puzzle, the Snyder notation is becoming more or less useless, because it only shows you what you already know. What you could do up here, where we need a 1, 2, and a 5, this is a 5. So one of these would be a 5, one of these would be a 2. And so what? It's not really helping. But we can try and see what happens if we go further down. There's a 6 here and a 6 here. So one of these must be a 6. So this is possibly the only so far usable pencil mark that I've input. I'm only doing this as an example, or as a demonstration of how I would use pencil marks. Because here I don't see any value in using Snyder notation at all. We know that one of these must be a 4, okay? And we know that, yeah, what else do we know? We got a 9, 9, 8, 8. We got the 2 8s here. We got, for the sake of argument, let's say that this is all we can know. It isn't all, but I'm focusing on this box 9 down here. Of course, I know that one of these must be a 5, and I know that one of these must be a 4, because it's pretty obvious. But again, one of these must be a 4, right? But I don't really know what to do with that information because I've got a 4 here and a 4 here. That would be kind of an X-wing, but since we have 4s everywhere else, I know that the 4 here, the 4 here blocks over here, and the 4 here blocks down here. So one of these could be a 4, but again, this would be 3 squares, and that would collide with the teachings of the Snyder notation because there is 1 square too many. So what I usually do, if I have to resort to pencil marks, I mark all the by value cells. By this I mean I pencil mark cells that can have exactly 2 values because to me that conveys much more information that the Snyder notation, which only shows me what I know. So up here, this would be a 1, 2. This would be a 1, 5 cell, and I wouldn't touch this. So I would remove the pencil marks, and these cells would be just 1 and 5, and this would be 1 and 2. And that is how I would go about marking up these empty squares. But I fully realize that lots of players like to use this Snyder notation, but I think that once you get the hang of solving these sudokus without using too many pencil marks, you will find that it is much faster to just mentally know where the digits are going instead of having to mark them up and then having to remove all the markups. I've also seen some players just mark up everything, but that is like not seeing the trees because of the forest. And that is definitely only a last resort kind of markup. In this case here, looking at these cells here, I can see that I need 3, 4, 5, and an 8. There's a 3 and a 5 here, so I would mark this up with a 4, 8. There's a 4, 5 here, I would mark that up as a 3, 8. Because this kind of markup more easily lets me find triples and quadruples. What this tells us, though, is that if there were a 4 here, for example, if that was possible, I know it's not, but if it were possible, and we have these 4s here, then this would be kind of a finned X-wing. So either this fin is true, in which case this cannot be true, or the X-wing is true, and this still can't be true. So we could remove this as a candidate for a 4. In this case, there is nothing to remove because it can't be a 4 in any event. Anyway, enough talking about pencil marks. I just thought I needed to show this just this once. And let's continue to our regular scheduled program and see if we can continue solving this puzzle without using further pencil marks. By the way, I noticed that I put in a 3-8 here, but it's supposed to be a 3-9, of course. Sorry about that. But it's not really material in terms of the previous discussion. But what we did find with a 9 here was that this can't be a 9 anymore, so it must be an 8, and that makes this a 9. And we did find that without pencil marks, by the way. And now one of these must be a 9. And now that we have the 8 coming down here, we are blocking here. We've got the 8 over here blocking here. So one of these must be an 8. And because we have the 1 blocking down here, we know that this must be an 8 now, and that immediately gives us this 4. The only two digits now missing here is going to be a 3 and a 5. We have a 5 in this row, so this is a 3 and this is a 5. And that makes this a 5 and this a 1. You see, we don't even need the pencil marks to do this. One of these must now be a 1. And that means that these two have to be a 3 and a 2. So if one of these is a 2, this can't very well be a 2, can it? So it must be an 8, and that makes this a 2. I feel that we are getting a little closer. Across here, we need to find a 1, 9, and a 4. We have a 4 here and a 4 here, so this must be a 4. And that makes this a 4. Now this is a 1, 9, and this is a 1, 9. But you see, there's no reason to enter a 1, 9 pencil marks here because there's absolutely no reason we shouldn't be able to remember that. And by the way, the two 8s we found at the very beginning of this puzzle have now been resolved because we found the 8 up here. This is now a 2 and this is an 8. And that makes this an 8 because we have an 8 blocking over here, right? And we have these squares blocked by these 8. So this is an 8. And we have now all the 7s and all the 8s. The 3 blocks down here and the 3 blocks over here. So this is a 3. Now we just need 1 and a 9 for these two squares. We have a 9 blocking here, so this is a 1 and this is a 9. Now we got a 9 here or here. And these two empty squares must be a 5 and a 6. Now we have a 6 already in this box, so this is a 5 and this is a 6. And that takes care of the 5, 6 we had here. And now we got a 5 over here, and we got a 5 coming down here, so this is a 5. And we have these empty squares here, they have to be a 1, 3, and a 9. Let a 9 coming, well, this is a 9, of course, because we have this 9 blocking. This is now a 1, 3. We have a 1 in the row, so this is a 3 and this is a 1. This is a 1 and this is a 2. By the way, before I forget it, of course, for extremely difficult puzzles, pencil marks are necessary. I'm sure it's not that we can solve everything notation free, but most puzzles that I see online in newspapers, and frankly, most puzzles that my phone apps give me can be solved notation free if we put our mind to it, of course. This cannot be a 1 anymore. This must be a 9, making this a 1. And this must be a 9 because it's the last digit missing from the row. And that makes this a 9. What else? Yeah, a 3, of course, must go here. And we know that one of these was a 3, didn't we? So now this is a 3. The other one is a 2, making this a 2. Now this must be a 1 and this must be a 1. This must be a 4 and this must be a 4 and this must be a 5. And there you go, we solved it. I thank you for following through all this long video, and I hope that you will come back for more soon. Goodbye for now.